He told the wrong man to shut his mouth. A rookie cop, drunk on power, blind to the badge in front of him. But this wasn't just any black man. This was the chief of police. And when the truth hit the system that built him, it didn't just break. It cost $10 million to keep quiet. Before we start the story, tell me, where are you watching from? And if these stories speak to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. He knew the sound before the color hit the glass. The low animal growl of sirens rising behind him, chewing through the night like bad news with teeth. Marcus Johnson kept both hands high on the wheel, fingers spread, a steady breath counting seconds in the dark, the way a man learns to do long before he gets a badge, and long after he earns the title that should have meant safety. Rain dappled the windshield in slow bullets, streetlights smearing into nervous halos as he rolled to the shoulder and killed the engine. And there it was, fear first, not because he'd done anything wrong, but because in this country, fear comes standard with a black man's driver's seat. What if the system was never meant to be fair in the first place? The question wasn't a slogan. It was the pulse in his neck. The cruiser door creaked open behind him. Boots hit wet asphalt like a challenge. A flashlight beam cut through the car, jittery and impatient, crawling over his cheek, his chest, the empty passenger seat, as if innocence were something you could miss if you blinked. "Hands where I can see 'em," barked a young voice, trying to sound taller than the uniform. Marcus said, "They're up," calm, clear, polite like he'd taught rookies 100 times. And here's the twist the thumbnail promised. That voice, the one that would soon spit "shut your mouth" like a threat, belonged to a rookie who had no clue he was posturing at the town's new black police chief. The title ain't hype. It's a receipt. The rookie leaned in, rain hitting his hat brim and exploding in little tantrums. "License and registration." Marcus nodded. "My wallet's in the inside pocket, left side. I'm going to reach. Slow." He said it the way men say it when they know the difference between a smooth night and a body bag might be 4 inches of misunderstood movement. "Keep your hands where I can see 'em." The beam rattled again, dancing over his badge clipped near the console, but never actually seeing it. Racism don't need glasses. It wears blinders. Marcus moved like a tutorial. No surprises. No rush, just a measured glide toward his wallet. Heartbeat steady, breath on a metronome. "Sir, I'm the—" "Don't talk. Do what I said." Young voice, old script. Control for control's sake, because some folks think respect is something you can yell into existence. Marcus opened the wallet, slow enough to age a year. He could feel the rookie's fear filling the car like fog. He knew fear. He'd met it at accident scenes and gun calls, de-escalated it in kitchen arguments and church parking lots. But fear mixed with arrogance? That's gasoline meeting a match. "I'm putting the wallet on the dash," he said, and did. 2 hands high again, 10 perfect fingers for the camera. That wasn't even there yet. Rain thickened. Tires hissed on the highway behind them, like whispering witnesses. "Step out of the vehicle." No explanation, no probable cause, no reason besides skin that read louder than a badge. Marcus swallowed the heat in his chest and looked forward, like the training videos say. "Officer, I'm reaching for my badge to identify myself. I said out, now." The flashlight wasn't light anymore. It was the tip of a spear. He could see the rookie's face a little better through the rain. Jaw clenched, eyes wide. The kind of performance you get when a kid thinks meanness is the short road to respect. Marcus opened the door and stepped into the cold, hands still up, shoulder damp in a second, the road gritty under his shoes. "Turn around. I'm the—" "Shut your mouth." The words hit like a shove before the hands ever did, and that's the line the whole town would be repeating by morning. The thumbnail wasn't just clickbait. It was prophecy. He tasted rain and restraint on his lips, turned slow, and felt a palm press between his shoulders, hard enough to argue with his balance. He didn't fight it. A lifetime in this uniform had taught him the math, how to survive the moment so you can tell the truth about it later. He set his jaw and let the officer guide him to the hood, cold metal telegraphing the rookie's shaking through steel. "Spread your feet." He did. The beam trembled over his badge again and still missed it like bias missing evidence. "You got any weapons on you?" "I carry. I'm sworn. I said shut it." Voice louder now, like volume could make wrong feel right. A passing car eased by, tires whispering, a face peeking from behind a wiper blade and vanishing into the rain. Marcus could feel his heartbeat moving from his throat to his fingers and back. He kept his gaze on the reflection in the hood, blue and red chasing each other across the wet paint, like a carnival built to sell fear. He could see himself in that reflection too, a grown man trained to keep other people safe, trying to keep himself alive on a roadside he drove yesterday, like it was just a road. "What's the stop for?" he asked, softer than the engine ticks. "Polite costs nothing, but it buys receipts." "Signal violation," the rookie said, too fast, like he'd pulled the reason out of a vending machine. "And the smell?" He paused, searching for a narrative in the rain. "The smell of what?" Marcus asked. "Don't get smart with me." A second cruiser rolled up, tires pushing little rivers around his shoes. Backup stepped out, two silhouettes framed in blue. One of them slowed when he saw Marcus's posture. The steady stillness, the calculated calm. Old heads recognize it. It's the stillness of someone who knows the script, because he's taught the script. "Everything all right, Hayes?" The older silhouette called, easy but watchful. The rookie didn't answer. He patted down Marcus's pockets, hands moving like a checklist. "I'm reaching toward my left breast pocket," Marcus said, and for the first time, the older silhouette caught the glint. "Hold up, Hayes," the older one said, voice slicing clean through rain. "You see that?" The rookie's beam froze. It landed on the badge, polished metal beating with rain, the seal heavy with authority. You're supposed to respect, even if you don't like the face wearing it. The moment hung there, ugly and honest. The rookie hesitated, and in that split second, the power dynamic shifted, just enough to let the truth peek through. "What's that?" Hayes snapped. But the snap had less teeth now. "What you think it is," the older silhouette muttered, stepping closer, hand dropping away from his holster, like a curtain ending the act. "Sir," he said to Marcus, the word hitting differently this time, like it remembered its manners. "Let me see your ID." "Chief Johnson," Marcus said, still not moving till invited, because surviving is an old habit. "Inside pocket." The older cop nodded. "Go slow." He did. Wallet again, left side again, the world's longest 4 inches again. He slid out the card holder, flipped to the shield, and placed both on the hood, open for the rain and anyone with eyes. The rookie stared, the math in his head collapsing like a cheap tent. He looked smaller now, like the uniform shrank in the wash. "This man's the new chief," the older officer said. Not loud, just final. The word chief sat there between them, heavy as a gavel, light as a lie undone. Hayes tried to recover the act, but you can't swagger uphill. He still failed to comply, he said, but his voice swung wide and missed. He was reaching. He told you every move he'd make. The older officer's tone wasn't debate. It was post-incident paperwork. Rain eased to a drizzle, the way a crowd quiets when the truth walks in late. Marcus stayed still, breathing even, the cold of the hood sliding from his skin, like a question settling into an answer. He thought about all the times he told young officers that respect ain't a trick you pull out of your throat. It's a habit you put in your hands. He thought about a son he didn't have, and what he'd tell him if he did. He thought about Angela at home, lamp on, coffee cooling, the TV murmuring another town's headline, never thinking tonight would audition theirs. The rookie stepped back, and that's when the line slipped out again, softer, but carrying the same rot, like he couldn't help himself. Should have just shut your mouth. There it was, the thesis of a whole system, said plain in the rain. Not follow the law, not respect the process, but don't speak. Silence as policy. The older officer's jaw tightened. That's enough, Hayes. It wasn't about protecting the chief now. It was about protecting the department from a narrative already writing itself. But narratives love receipts, and the dashcam had been chewing on this scene since the first order to put hands up. The light on the unit blinked, the little red eye that never blinks. Marcus closed his eyes for a beat, not to pray it away, but to collect it all. Tone, timing, posture, every syllable. A lifetime of training met a lifetime of surviving, and the survivor in him took notes the way good cops take statements, carefully, completely, like truth's a puzzle you owe it to the world to solve. "We good here?" he asked, voice low, not conceding an inch, not begging for a mile. The older officer nodded once, like a man acknowledging weather he couldn't control. "Chief, you're free to go." He said it, but nobody was free of anything. Not the rookie, whose face now looked like tomorrow's headline wearing yesterday's pride. Not the department, which had just made a mess on the one night it thought the camera was its friend. Not Marcus. Because you don't walk away from something like this. You carry it. He picked up the badge, wiped it with a sleeve. The metal felt heavier, not because of rainwater, but because of what it had just proved, that the shine means less than the skin wearing it in a country that keeps receipts on both. He slid back into the driver's seat, hands on the wheel again, same posture as the start, but a different kind of quiet. The sirens wound down to a sulk. The road hummed like it wanted to apologize and couldn't find words. He didn't start the car yet. He looked at the mirror and saw himself the way the camera had seen him. Calm, careful, correct. 3 C's that still almost got traded for cuffs. He exhaled. Not relief, decision. The rain softened to a hush, like the night had leaned in to listen. He turned the key, engine catching with a tired shrug, wipers sweeping away the last stubborn streaks. He pulled off slow. Speed deliberate, back into the river of headlights, heading nowhere important. In the mirror, the rookie's silhouette shrank, and for a second, Marcus felt pity, because fear mixed with power makes a monster out of boys, and a policy out of mistakes. 2 miles later, the question crept back, what if the system was never meant to be fair? But now it wore a different face. What if fairness needs help louder than silence? He tapped the steering wheel, not to a song, but to a plan. The badge lay warm under his palm. He pictured the dashcam footage moving from a locked drawer to an inbox to a screen the size of a living room, watched by a wife who would hear "shut your mouth" and feel the sting behind every letter. He pictured a lawyer who'd seen this movie and knew which frames to freeze. He pictured a town deciding who it wants to be when the lights are on and the excuses don't work. And just as he pictured all that, his phone buzzed on the console. Unknown number, local prefix, timing too perfect to be an accident. He let it buzz twice, 3 times, the glow painting the cabin in cold light. Then he slid a thumb across the glass, lifted it to his ear, and listened without speaking. Because sometimes the smartest thing a man can do is let someone else prove the story for him. The voice on the line was shaky, like courage that hadn't learned its own name yet. "Chief, you don't know me," it said, rain whispering in the background. I was across the street. I saw everything. If they try to spin this, I got video. The engine's idle felt louder, the road felt straighter, and the silence that used to be a muzzle began to feel like a fuse. The phone call ended, but the words stayed burning in Marcus's ear like static that knew too much. I got video. He sat there a long minute, watching the rain fade into mist, the road quiet, as if the night itself had run out of excuses. Then he shifted into drive. Every streetlight he passed threw pieces of his reflection across the windshield. Chief, husband, target. The badge on his chest didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like evidence. By sunrise, the story had already leaked. Somebody had uploaded the clip to social media before dawn. 30 seconds of rain, headlights, and one line that punched through the scroll. "Shut your mouth." The internet did what it always does. Argued, dissected, judged. Half the comments called it fake. The other half called it familiar. Angela watched the footage in the kitchen, phone trembling in her hand. The coffee she'd poured hours ago was cold. "He didn't even fight back," she whispered to nobody. That was the part that broke her, the calm. The kind of calm that only comes from knowing your dignity has to survive what your body might not. She hit call, and when Marcus answered, she didn't speak right away. He could hear her breathing, soft and shaky. "It's everywhere," she said finally. "They know." Across town, Officer Hayes was watching the same clip, but on mute. Like silence could save him from it. He kept replaying the frame where Marcus's badge hit the hood. The department group chat was blowing up. Every emoji an opinion, every reaction a crack in the brotherhood he thought was solid. The chief he disrespected now owned the morning. By noon, local reporters were outside the station, microphones blooming like weeds in the rain. "Internal review, pending investigation, standard procedure." The same phrases rolled out again, like wallpaper made of apologies. But the camera doesn't lie the way paperwork can. David Thompson, the civil rights lawyer, knew that. He'd already pulled the raw dashcam feed before lunch. "You want to fight the spin?" he told Marcus on the phone. "You start with their own footage." That night, the city council called an emergency meeting. The mayor tried to sound neutral, but neutrality sounds a lot like guilt when the facts are public. "We're taking this seriously," he said, which everyone in the room heard as "we're taking this personally." Angela sat beside Marcus in the back row, her hand on his knee under the table. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence around him carried more weight than any statement could. Outside, protesters started gathering with signs that read, "Badges don't erase bias." Their voices rose into the humid night, blending with the hum of camera drones above. Marcus stepped out onto the steps for air, rain starting again in soft taps. A young man with a hoodie and a live streaming phone shouted, "Chief, you gonna press charges?" Marcus looked straight into the lens. "I'm gonna tell the truth," he said, "and let the truth do what it does." The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in something louder than applause. Belief, that fragile, dangerous thing that systems fear most. He felt Angela's hand tighten around his. He didn't smile. He just breathed, slow, measured. Somewhere across town, Hayes was packing a duffel bag, convinced the world had turned on him. Maybe it had. Maybe it finally turned toward justice for once. As the chants grew louder and the cameras swarmed closer, Marcus turned toward the courthouse lights flickering at the end of the block. He knew where this road led now, through hearings headlines, and the kind of truth that scorches both the guilty and the good. He exhaled, rain sliding down his face, and walked toward the steps, knowing one thing for sure. They told him to shut his mouth, but the whole damn city was about to start speaking for him. The city didn't sleep that week. You could feel it, like static in the air, like everyone knew the next breath could set something on fire. Every TV station, every feed, every diner conversation in town was locked on one question. How does a cop mistake the chief for a threat? At headquarters, the walls were sweating secrets. Nobody said Marcus's name out loud, but it floated through the hallways like smoke. Officers who used to nod now looked at the floor. Some whispered, "He's making it racial." Others said, "He's right." It didn't matter who was right. Truth had already left the building. David Thompson, the civil rights lawyer, walked into the chief's office with a calm only years of chaos could build. "They're going to spin this, Marcus," he said, setting down a manila folder, fat with paperwork. Internal Affairs is already writing a report that makes the rookie look scared, not racist. Marcus leaned back, jaw locked. "Fear doesn't slam a man into his own hood, David." David smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was recognition. "Exactly why we're not negotiating. We're suing." Outside, the media circus had turned the front steps into a stage. Reporters shouted questions through raindrops. "Chief Johnson, is this about police reform? Are you resigning? Do you forgive Officer Hayes?" Marcus didn't answer. He just stood there, coat collar up, eyes steady. Because sometimes silence says more than a soundbite ever could. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Officer Hayes sat on a bench, scrolling through hate messages. "You done messed with the wrong one. Your badge ain't bulletproof, boy." Each notification hit like static shock. He thought the uniform made him untouchable. Now it made him a target. The captain walked in, shut the door, and said the line every department says when it's too late. "We're placing you on leave, son." Hayes didn't fight it, just nodded, blank. But behind that blankness, anger brewed. Not the kind that apologizes, but the kind that looks for someone else to blame. "He set me up," he muttered, over and over, like he needed it to sound true. Back at City Hall, Angela sat beside Marcus during a press conference. The mayor tried to play both sides, talking about lessons learned and moving forward. Marcus listened, but didn't flinch. When it was his turn at the mic, the room froze. He didn't read a statement. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "If a black man wearing a badge still isn't safe, then who is?" The silence after that line wasn't quiet. It was heavy, like the city finally ran out of excuses. Reporters lowered their mics. Even the mayor looked smaller under the lights. That night, Angela watched her husband on TV again. Same footage replaying, same caption looping. "Chief breaks silence." Except he hadn't broken silence. He'd turned it into proof. And somewhere in that silence, in the spaces between headlines and hashtags, America's oldest wound reopened. For the first time, the story wasn't about a man resisting arrest. It was about a system resisting accountability. Marcus knew it was just beginning. The department, the union, the lawyers, they'd all come for him next. But he wasn't running. He'd already spent a lifetime running inside his own skin. He turned off the TV, kissed Angela's forehead, and said quietly, "Tomorrow we fight." The next morning, as the courthouse doors opened and the cameras lined the street, one reporter shouted, "Chief, do you regret speaking out?" Marcus didn't stop walking, didn't look back. He just said, Ask me that when justice finally shows up. And that's when the crowd behind him roared. Not for revenge, but for truth, finally walking into daylight, wearing a badge of its own. The courthouse smelled like old lies and fresh coffee. Reporters lined the marble steps like vultures, pretending to be journalists, waiting for the next headline to bleed. The sign above the door read, "In God We Trust," but inside, everyone was worshiping politics. Marcus walked in steady, suit pressed, eyes forward. Angela's hand brushed his arm, subtle, grounding. David Thompson led the way, a briefcase in one hand, a quiet storm in the other. He didn't talk much. He didn't need to. His confidence spoke louder than any gavel. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with unspoken tension. On one side, Marcus, a black police chief who'd worn the badge to protect his people. On the other, the same department trying to prove he was overreacting. That's how racism survives. It learns to smile in suits and call itself procedure. The rookie sat at the defense table, face pale, eyes darting like he was stuck between regret and resentment. His lawyer leaned close, whispering strategies built on denial. "We'll say he feared for his life," the attorney murmured, loud enough for Marcus to hear. David didn't even blink. "Fear doesn't excuse arrogance," he said under his breath. "And arrogance doesn't erase accountability." The judge walked in, and the room rose like a choir that didn't believe in the hymn. Cameras clicked, pens scratched, and somewhere deep in the back, a mother whispered, "I hope they finally listen this time." David opened first. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Your Honor, this case isn't about one officer and one mistake. It's about a system that punishes skin before it asks for ID." He pressed play on the dashcam footage. The courtroom lights dimmed. The screen lit up blue and red, flashing over faces like guilt caught in motion. Then came the sound. Hayes shouting, "Shut your mouth!" The words echoed off the walls, bouncing through the silence like a bullet you couldn't unhear. Angela flinched. The judge's eyes narrowed. Even the court reporter's fingers hesitated, unsure if they were supposed to type that line or pray over it. When the lights came back on, David didn't need to say much. "That's the sound of authority when it forgets its purpose," he said quietly. The defense tried to recover. They called Hayes to the stand. He looked smaller now, his confidence shaved down to excuses. "I thought he was reaching for a weapon," he said. "It was dark, raining, and I couldn't see." David stepped forward, voice steady but sharp. "So you didn't see the badge clipped to his dashboard?" Hayes hesitated. "No, sir." "You didn't hear him identify himself?" I wasn't sure." David leaned in. "But you were sure enough to shove him face first into his own hood?" Hayes swallowed hard. The silence between the question and his answer said everything. Across the room, one juror shook her head, slow and deliberate, like someone watching a movie she's seen too many times before. David turned to the jury. "You've all seen this story," he said, "just not with a badge on the victim." That line hit like a verdict long before the real one came. After court adjourned, Marcus stepped outside. The sun had come out, but it didn't feel warm. It felt like the light was interrogating the truth itself. Cameras swarmed again, reporters shouting, "Chief, do you feel vindicated?" Marcus didn't stop walking. He just said, "Vindication don't bring respect back. It just shows you how much they stole." Later that night, in their living room, Angela sat on the couch with the news muted. The scrolling headline read, "Trial continues. Rookie cop claims unconscious bias. She laughed bitterly. Unconscious? That man yelled every word conscious. Marcus poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter. They're trying to make the problem sound poetic, he said. Bias, miscommunication, protocol, it's all just a new way to spell racism without saying it. Angela looked up, eyes tired but proud. So what happens now? He took a long sip, eyes on the badge sitting on the table. Now we make them say it. He didn't know yet how loud that truth would echo. He didn't know that somewhere behind closed doors, the department's PR team was already planning their counterattack, an anonymous leak, a disciplinary report, something to smear the chief before the verdict hit. But he did know one thing. Fear had changed sides. The next morning, a news anchor's voice broke through every home in town. New footage has surfaced, recorded by a bystander during the incident. Marcus froze. Angela turned toward the screen. The footage was clearer, rawer, longer. It showed everything the dashcam missed. Hayes' face, the shove, the tone that told the truth words can't hide. And right there, in front of millions, the lie collapsed. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just whispered. Guess the truth decided to wake up early. Outside, sirens wailed again in the distance. But this time, they weren't chasing him. They were chasing change. The new footage didn't just go viral, it detonated. By noon, every major news outlet had it pinned to their homepage. By evening, talk shows were dissecting it frame by frame, hosts pretending to be shocked at something black folks had been screaming for decades. The clip was raw. Shaky phone footage from across the street. Rain's slick lens catching Hayes' face in full color as he slammed Marcus into the hood. The audio was clear this time. You could hear Marcus saying, "Calm as daylight. Officer, I'm the chief of police." And then the echo, sharp and cruel. "Shut your mouth." No one could spin that. Not the department, not the union, not even the PR suits who made their living turning blood into paperwork. The truth had already found its audience. By sunset, the city was split in two. On one side, folks marched downtown holding signs that said "Justice for Marcus" and "Silence is violence." On the other, a smaller group of off-duty officers stood with arms crossed, muttering about loyalty and betrayal. The city looked like a wound fighting with itself to heal. Inside headquarters, the mood was panic wearing perfume. The chief's chair sat empty. Marcus was still on leave, but his presence was everywhere. The commissioner paced the hall, barking orders at the media team. "We can't let this define us," he said, voice sharp with fear. But it was already too late. When truth goes viral, it doesn't need permission to define anything. David Thompson knew that better than anyone. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Journalists, activists, law students, all wanting a quote. He didn't give them quotes. He gave them receipts. He dropped one interview that night, quiet but surgical. This isn't just one officer's bias. It's a system's reflex. And it's been rehearsing for 400 years. That line broke the internet. Clipped, remixed, turned into protest art and graffiti overnight. Kids painted it on walls. Someone projected it onto City Hall. Marcus watched it from his living room, the glow from the TV flickering over his face. Angela sat beside him, silent, one hand tracing the edge of his wedding ring. "You really think it'll change anything?" she asked softly. Marcus stared at the screen a long moment. "Change don't happen fast," he said. "But exposure happens overnight." The next morning, his phone rang again. This time, it wasn't the reporter or a lawyer. It was the mayor. "Marcus, we need to talk," the voice said, tired but rehearsed. "This is escalating. There's property damage downtown. Officers are getting threats. We can't afford chaos." Marcus let him finish, then said, "You want peace? Fix what caused the war." The mayor sighed. "We'll issue a statement." Marcus hung up. Statements don't fix rot, they just perfume it. Later that day, he drove to the station. The same parking lot, same badge clipped to his belt, same silence when he walked through the doors. Eyes followed him like ghosts. He passed Hayes's locker, empty now, nameplate gone, the ghost of a man who thought power meant control. Upstairs, the Internal Affairs Board waited. White walls, white shirts, white knuckles. They didn't offer him a seat. He took one anyway. "Chief Johnson," one officer started, voice flat as copy paper, "we're reviewing department conduct, including yours. Some feel your public statements have compromised morale." Marcus smiled faintly. If the truth breaks morale, maybe morale wasn't built right. They shifted uncomfortably, flipping through files that meant nothing anymore. He could see it in their faces. They weren't defending Hayes. They were defending themselves from reflection. He leaned forward. "I took this job believing the badge meant something, that it could protect people like me. But maybe it was never designed for that. Maybe it was built to protect fear wearing a uniform." Silence filled the room. Not the respectful kind, the guilty kind. That night, Angela found him outside on the porch, cigarette burning low between his fingers, though he'd quit years ago. "You good?" she asked. He exhaled smoke and memory. "Nah," he said, "but I'm getting honest." The news played from inside. Clips of the city, crowds chanting, fires lighting up corners of injustice, like flares in the dark. The anchor's voice carried faintly through the open window. Civil rights groups across the country are calling for the department's resignation and national police reform after the viral footage involving Chief Marcus Johnson. Marcus stared at the sky. "They think this is about me," he said quietly. "It's not. It's about everyone who never made it to the news." Angela stepped closer. "Then you keep talking for them." He nodded slowly. "That's the plan." Hours later, when the streets had quieted and the last chants faded into the night, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number with a voice that sounded almost afraid. "Chief Johnson, this is Officer Daniels. I was on dispatch that night. There's something you need to hear. The body cam footage, they edited it before release." Marcus froze. "What do you mean edited?" "Parts missing. The ones where Hayes said stuff. Racist stuff. They cut it out before the media request." The line crackled, the officer's voice shaking. "I have the raw copy." Marcus leaned back, pulse steady but hard. "Send it, because sometimes justice doesn't arrive in courtrooms. Sometimes it comes through a phone call after midnight, from someone finally too tired to protect the lie." He ended the call and looked out over the quiet street, the weight of what was coming pressing on his shoulders like armor. The city was asleep, but morning was bringing war. The email came at 3:07 a.m. No subject, no signature, just a video file. Marcus stared at the screen in the dark, the glow washing his face in blue light. The file name was simple, Raw Cam 1. He hesitated for half a second, then hit play. The video opened to the same night. The same rain, same trembling flashlight, but this time, no cuts, no edits, no technical malfunctions. Every second the public hadn't seen was there, naked and unfiltered. The rookie's voice sounded different now. Not nervous, not scared, confident, mean. "Look at you," Hayes sneered off camera. "Acting like you run the world 'cause they gave you a title." Marcus's own voice came next. Steady, professional, patient. "Officer, I'm the chief of police." A short pause. Then Hayes laughed. "Chief of what? That hood?" Marcus paused the video, staring into the frozen pixels like they could talk back. His throat tightened. Not from surprise, but from recognition. That kind of hate didn't come from fear. It came from heritage. Angela woke up, rubbing her eyes. "What's wrong?" He turned the laptop toward her. They hid this. She leaned forward, hand over her mouth, as the words poured out of the speakers. Every slur, every insult, every second of what the world wasn't supposed to hear. By the time the clip ended, she wasn't crying. She was shaking. "They tried to erase it," she whispered. "They tried to erase you." Marcus closed the laptop. "Then we'll make sure it never disappears again." By sunrise, the file was in David Thompson's hands. He watched it once, then again, each frame a nail in the department's coffin. "This," he said, voice razor sharp, "isn't a lawsuit anymore. This is history." He didn't call the press right away. He didn't need to. He leaked it straight to the people. At 8:22 a.m., the uncut footage hit social media. No disclaimers, no blur. Just truth in raw pixels. By 9 o'clock, hashtags were trending worldwide. By 10 o'clock, the city's police website crashed. By noon, national news anchors were calling it the most disturbing police cover-up of the decade. Every network replayed it, slowed it down, analyzed it. The world didn't just see a racist cop. They saw a system working overtime to hide one. At headquarters, chaos reigned. Phones rang non-stop. Officers avoided eye contact in the hall. The commissioner slammed a stack of papers onto his desk. "Who leaked it?" he roared. Nobody answered. Because deep down, they all knew it wasn't a leak. It was a confession. David held a press conference that afternoon. Cameras everywhere, microphones like thorns. He stood beside Marcus and spoke clearly. "When they tell you it's just one bad apple, remember who built the orchard." The crowd erupted. Journalists shouted questions, flashes popped, and somewhere in the noise, Marcus's phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." He didn't need to ask who it was. Hayes. David leaned in. "You good?" Marcus nodded slowly. "No, but I'm ready." That night, the mayor went live on TV, voice shaky, promising sweeping reforms and accountability at every level. But the people were done with promises. The streets were filled again. Marchers holding candles instead of signs. Silence instead of chants. It wasn't protest anymore. It was mourning for every name that never made the news. At home, Angela stood behind Marcus on the porch as he watched the city glow below. Sirens, headlights, voices. "You think they'll ever change?" she asked. Marcus exhaled smoke into the cool air. "Change don't start with them," he said. "It starts when we stop being scared to see what's really there." He looked at his badge on the table beside him. Once shiny, now just metal and memory. He picked it up, turned it in his hand. "They told me to shut my mouth," he said softly. "Now the whole damn world's speaking for me." Inside, the TV blared breaking news. Federal investigation launched into city police department. The announcer's voice faded under the hum of a city learning what accountability really sounds like. Marcus stood there, quiet, watching dawn crawl across the horizon. The light hit his face, like forgiveness and fire at once. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just whispered to the wind, "Justice don't whisper anymore." And somewhere across town, in a one-bedroom apartment, Officer Ryan Hayes sat alone, badge on the counter, phone buzzing with missed calls. He stared at the news coverage, his face reflected on the TV next to Marcus's. Two men, same city, same badge, but now the whole world knew which one deserved it. Hayes muttered under his breath, the same line he'd barked in the rain. "Should have just shut your mouth." He stopped mid-sentence, because the irony hit too hard. This time, it was his own silence that destroyed him. The courthouse was different this time. There were no empty seats, no quiet corners. Reporters filled every inch of the hallway, cameras stacked shoulder to shoulder, lights flashing like lightning in a storm that refused to move on. But inside courtroom 3B, everything was still. The judge hadn't walked in yet, but everyone could feel it coming. The moment the whole country had been waiting for. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table, calm, collected, suit sharp as a sermon. His hands rested on the folder in front of him, but his eyes stayed fixed on the floor, like he was talking to the ghosts of everyone who never got this far. Angela sat behind him, hands clasped tight, jaw steady. She hadn't slept in days, but her face carried that quiet pride only women who've carried men through hell can wear. Across the room, Officer Ryan Hayes looked like a man who'd aged a decade in a month. His once clean uniform was gone, just a wrinkled suit and a lawyer who couldn't meet his eyes. Every whisper in the room pointed toward him. He didn't need a verdict to know he'd already lost the one thing he thought power guaranteed: respect. When the judge entered, the murmurs died. David Thompson stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the center of the room, like a man who'd been waiting his whole life to tell this story. "Your Honor," he began, voice low but carrying. "We've seen the video. We've heard the words, and we've watched the silence that followed. This case isn't just about one traffic stop. It's about every time the system mistook dignity for defiance. It's about every badge that forgot it was meant to serve, not to scare." He paused, letting the silence speak for him. The jury sat motionless, eyes wet but unblinking. Today isn't about revenge. It's about truth finally catching up. He stepped back. The defense tried to recover, but their words were dust against stone. Officer Hayes acted on instinct, his lawyer argued. He feared for his safety. The judge raised a hand. "We've all seen the footage," she said flatly. "That's enough." The jury filed out. Minutes turned into hours that felt like years. Marcus didn't move. He'd waited his whole life for this verdict, but he didn't want to guess which way it would go. Justice had disappointed him too many times before. Angela leaned in. "Whatever happens, you did what you had to do." He nodded slowly. "I just hope it means something." When the jury returned, you could feel the air tighten. The foreman stood, paper trembling slightly in his hand. "In the case of Marcus Johnson versus the City Police Department," he said, "we find the defendant liable on all counts." A beat of silence. Then, total damages awarded, $10 million. The words echoed through the courtroom like thunder rolling off marble. David closed his eyes, just for a second, then exhaled through a smile. Angela's hands flew to her mouth, tears catching in her lashes. Marcus didn't move, not at first. He just sat there, the weight of 1,000 headlines pressing against his chest. $10 million. 10 million proofs that silence had finally cost the system something real. The judge tapped her gavel once. "This court stands adjourned." But no one stood. For a long moment, everyone just sat there, frozen in a silence heavier than any applause. Outside, the steps of the courthouse were flooded with reporters, protesters, and cameras. The air was electric. Justice had shown up late, but it had shown up. Marcus stepped into the sunlight, and the roar of the crowd hit him like a wave. Reporters shouted. Microphones lunged forward. Flashes painted his face white. "Chief Johnson, any words for the department?" He stopped on the last step, looked straight into the sea of lenses, and said, "They told me to shut my mouth. I didn't." Now the world knows why. The crowd erupted. Chant after chant rolled through the streets. His name, his story, his truth. That night, the city felt different. The noise had turned into reflection. Bars turned off the music to watch the coverage. Kids wore shirts with his quote printed bold across the front. "If a black man wearing a badge still ain't safe, who is?" Hayes disappeared from public view within days. The department released statements, apologies, commitments to reform. But Marcus knew paperwork doesn't cleanse history. It just hides it under new ink. Weeks passed. The world moved on to its next outrage. But every now and then, some stranger would stop Marcus on the street, shake his hand, and whisper, "You spoke for us." And that meant more than any paycheck ever could. One evening, Marcus drove the same road where it all began. The street was quiet, the asphalt still holding memories of rain and blue lights. He slowed near the spot, window down, wind cool on his face. The fear was gone now, replaced by something heavier. Truth. He pulled over, just for a moment, turned off the engine, and listened. No sirens, no shouting, just the hum of a city learning to breathe. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the badge. Clean, polished, heavy. Then he set it on the passenger seat and whispered, "You did your job." He looked out the window, eyes reflecting the same streetlight that once marked the worst night of his life. But tonight, it didn't feel like danger. It felt like closure. The camera of imagination pulls back, rain starting to fall again, softly this time, washing the city in silver. And over that quiet storm, his voice cuts through like thunder turned calm. Some men wear badges to serve. Others wear them to hide. But when the truth finally speaks, every mask falls. Fade to black. Weeks turned into months. The noise faded the way storms always do, not because the world healed, but because it got distracted. The hashtags cooled, the protests thinned, and the city went back to pretending everything was normal. But normal wasn't coming back. Not after that night. Marcus didn't chase the spotlight. He'd had enough of lights. Blue, red, flashing, burning. He turned them all off. He spent his mornings walking the same block he used to patrol, nodding at faces that used to look away. Now they looked up. Some smiled, some just stared, with the kind of quiet respect that doesn't need words. He'd become something bigger than a title, not a hero, not a victim, just proof that truth, once spoken, can't be silenced again. At home, the walls had new pictures, protest shots, courtroom stills, Angela standing proud beside him, newspaper clippings pinned like scars and trophies at once. She was the one who kept them there, reminders that justice had a price, and they paid it in public. One afternoon, a package arrived with no return label. Inside was a single envelope, no note, no address, just a folded letter and a badge. His old badge, the one he'd left on the passenger seat that night. He picked it up slowly, the metal cool against his fingers, the edges worn from years of duty and a single night of truth. The letter was short, messy handwriting. Chief, I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know I resigned. Am leaving the state. I'm sorry. Hayes. Marcus read it twice, then set it down beside the badge. He didn't smile, didn't curse, didn't tear it up. He just whispered, "Good," because sometimes justice isn't a cell. Sometimes it's the weight of knowing you can't hide from yourself anymore. That evening, he stood out on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the city skyline. Angela joined him, mug in hand, her head resting against his shoulder. "Still think it was worth it?" she asked softly. He took a breath that felt older than his years. "Every second," he said. "I'd do it again." Down the block, kids rode bikes through puddles left from last night's rain, their laughter cutting through the quiet like music in a movie with no soundtrack. For a moment, the world looked gentle again. Not perfect, not fair, just possible. Marcus turned the badge over in his hand one last time, then placed it on the railing, letting the sunset paint it gold. "You know," he said, "maybe justice ain't about winning. Maybe it's about surviving long enough to tell the story." Angela smiled faintly. "Then tell it," she said. And he did, not to the cameras, not to the courts, but to the quiet, to the next generation that would inherit the same fight, hoping to finish it. As night crept in, the porch light flickered on, catching the badge's shine one last time before the darkness claimed it. The street was still, the city breathing soft, the world briefly balanced. And then, as if echoing the first line of his nightmare, a single police siren wailed in the distance, low, fading, swallowed by wind. But this time, Marcus didn't flinch. He just looked out at the horizon, eyes steady, voice calm, whispering into the dark. "They told me to shut my mouth, and I turned that silence into history." Fade out. Silence.